And I think at first when we were starting to do it with our EP, people were like, "Oh, is this a Spanish band or a Mexican band? What's happening here?" But now with the full length, we've kind of been around at least a little bit for people to get the idea and be open to it. And I think it's 2024. You have like Rammstein, and there's a lot of bands like, black metal bands that are singing in other languages. I think Spanish is not too crazy for people to like be a language to be used in music. So that's why I think it's okay.
That's Luna of the heavy metal act Intranced. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Trendcrusher podcast. I'm Peter K, aka Trendcrusher. Thanks for the great response to the mixtape episode. I know it was blocked on a few platforms, but it's also up on Mixcloud. Yes, I have a Mixcloud also now. I'm going to link that in the show notes from now onwards. That's where all the mixtapes, I guess, are going to go. Before we get into my chat with Luna from Intranced, I'd like to play a track by an English band, Graywave. They play a hypnotic mix of shoegaze and grunge, and last week they released their EP, Dancing in the Dust, by easily one of my favorite underground metal labels, Church Road Records. Here's the title track of their EP, Dancing in the Dust. and that was Graywave with Dancing in the Dust. I love how the vocals kind of just take over in the middle of the track. Yeah, it just takes you to a different place. Speaking about vocals, that's how exactly I felt about Intranced when I heard their album, which is Muerte y Metal. Yes, some of the tracks are in Spanish. We talk about that, the entire process, putting together the album, and much more. Here's my chat with Luna. Hi, Luna. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Peter. How you doing?
Good, good. And, we're talking a week before the release of your first full-length album as Intranced. And I actually looked up this pronunciation, so give me a second when I say it. Muerte y Metal, which actually is Spanish that translates to death and metal. So just to start off, since you're kind of talking to press, how does it feel kind of like speaking to various media and hearing back and getting response to the album?
So far what I've received has been positive, and it just feels nice to like have it out there and people listening to it, even if it's just for like friends and family and press right now. And so far it's been positive feedback, and because we were really excited about it. So to hear that other people are feeling similar, I guess just that our message came across the way we were trying to make this music and the sounds we were going for, I think it's translating. And so it's nice to hear that people are getting the sound that we were going for, and that, it's nice to like not have it be such a secret anymore now that it's starting to come out,
Yeah, and right up front, before we kind of dive into the album, there are a couple of questions I had, so let's get those out of the way. One is,
Sure.
I was very curious about that your tracks, a lot of them are in Spanish. What's the response been to that in terms of not just from the press, but also like your friends and family that you say, right?
Yeah, I think starting off with our EP, that was our first release. There was one song that had a Spanish like phrase in it, and then we had a single that came out after that had one song that was half and half Spanish. And so I think for me, just kind of exploring this realm of trying stuff in Spanish, and so what is now called Reyes de las Tinieblas, it had a working title of something else, and I wanted to make it the chorus in Spanish, and if it made sense to do the whole song in Spanish, I was going to do it. And I had an idea that worked, and it really fleshed out. It came together really easily, and the guys were into it, and they wanted to be the first song on the record. So starting off with a all Spanish song was kind of a bold move, I think, for a first record, but I think it encompasses what we're trying to go for, which is, I guess in a way, kind of stick out in the sense that we have Latino heritage from Mexico and Argentina, and embracing that and kind of saying, I mean, even using a Spanish album title and the track Muerte y Metal, it even though like metal is like, can be like, I think that same word is used in several different languages, but just how you pronounce it. So we thought it would be kind of fun to just throw it. And muerte is somewhat common just because it's death, and some people that are around enough Spanish speakers might understand what muerte means. But I just thought it was a cool title and a cool song idea that it would make sense to be on the album title. And so far people are open to it and receiving it well. And I think at first when we were starting to do it with our EP, people were like, oh, is this a Spanish band or a Mexican band? What's happening here? But now with the full length, we've kind of been around at least a little bit to get for people to get the idea and be open to it. And I think it's 2024. You have like Rammstein, and there's a lot of bands like, black metal bands that are singing in other languages. I think Spanish is not too crazy for people to like be a language that to be used in music. So that's why I think it's okay.
Yeah, and I must confess, right? This is actually the first time I'm listening to heavy metal in Spanish. So I was also curious how it kind of works out, right? I mean, you talked about black metal. Sometimes it's just the scream, so you can't really make out. But when you look at it, and I was like particularly listening to the Spanish tracks yesterday, like phonetically, just the entire flow, it's so beautiful, right? And I think it fits so well, especially the ballads, right? So I was like, wow, this is very interesting there. What I also quickly wanted to check, because I couldn't find much. I did see one interview where you mentioned it, so I wanted to quickly clear this up. Someone I've spoken to extensively, no surprise to you, in the past has been Trevor from Haunt, right? And he's been on this prolific stretch over the last, like, I'd say 5-7 years releasing music. But I read in a past interview that he had a catalyst. He played a catalyst in the band. Could you clear that up and tell us how, like, that happened, or did I misread something?
Oh yeah, no. So for us, the way this band started was Philly and Ben had a band called Fortress, which is now continued going. But for a moment, they were having lineup issues and asked me if I wanted to sing and for their band. And I said, well, I'm looking to start a new project, because I had just kind of like put Holy Grail on hold that I was doing for like almost 12 years. And so I was like, I just want something new right now. And so they agreed, and we started what became Intranced. And then Trevor, who's friends with Philly, and I'd met a few times, but Philly had played on some of Haunt's recordings before, and guest solos and stuff, and he has a good working relationship with Trevor. So Trevor had offered Philly and Fortress to do a tour, but since Fortress wasn't happening at the time, and Trevor said, well, if you get this new band with Luna, like, if you guys can record a record and like press like CD or a vinyl in time, like, you guys can do this tour, like, but you just like just do it, man, like, because this would be awesome for you guys. And so that was the catalyst. It's like, well, okay, we we don't fully have a name yet, and we have song ideas, and I think we can make it happen. So we decided on a name, Intranced, and then we got the recordings. It was like a really, like, just fast paced, like, okay, what's the next thing we got to do? And we just had this big to-do list of like, okay, get the songs together, get the, record the drums, and then finally got it. And like, we got the vinyl, like, for our EP, like, just barely in time to go on tour, and then we did the tour. And so, yeah, it was great. So that was all thanks to Trevor.
Yeah, and he's one of those people, I feel, who's like so prolific and constantly on the go. So yeah, it's awesome that it's kind of rubbing off on others, I guess, also. But going back to what you said, right? And you've been again in bands for quite some time, right? White Wizard, Holy Grail. How different would you say the entire band dynamic in Intranced is compared to when it comes to just like songwriting or just recording? And maybe you could even talk how different it was with regards to Muerte y Metal also.
Yeah, so it's a lot different. There's there's a big age gap between me and Philly, but Philly has a lot of the song ideas. Like, he's a very prolific writer as well, always coming up with riffs. there was 2 songs that I contributed to this record, but Philly had like from like scratch for me, but Philly had like a lot of ideas that we didn't use on the EP, and then a lot of fresh ones, and even some that were just like a lick here or there that we'd like hear and play in practice, and then we're like, let's just jam that out, and then we turned it into like a song like on the fly. So I think there was Holy Grail for example was a bit more like one guy would write all the parts, and then we would trade files back and forth, and then we would we wouldn't jam it out as much. Maybe the early days, definitely in White Wizard, we would kind of jam stuff out a bit more, but it still felt like this is one guy's idea. Here's all the parts, and then if you have ideas for changing it, we kind of mess with it. But in Entranced, it was a little bit more fluid and organic, and which I think translates on the record, because there's some songs that was like, we really tried to get that original groove of like first hearing a riff and then going on a jam session on that riff and creating a song, and trying to like get that tempo and that vibe when we jam it out for like the actual recordings. So that's kind of how we went through the process. And a big difference versus the EP, where we were like kind of pressed for time. We were still a bit pressed for time because High Roller Records gave us like a time window that they wanted to release it for the full length for Muerte y Metal. But the difference was we went to Argentina for a month and stayed with Nico. He had just bought a house down there. Ben, our drummer, was having a baby. Him and his wife were busy. So me and Philly went down to meet with Nico in Argentina. I spent a month down there, and we just like wrote, demoed, and played with a lot of different song ideas, and just spent that time away from home, just like in this realm of just creativity. And I think that really helped like generate a lot of ideas and kind of get the structure of the record, which you hear now.
Wow, that's really interesting. I didn't realize you guys actually went all the way to Argentina and kind of worked and recorded that. That sounds like a lot of fun and really cool. What I wanted to understand, and maybe you can kind of dive more into, I mean, if you look at it, and from what the press note says, the lyrics of the album kind of vary, right? They're real life experiences, there's ups and downs, there's grief, death. What kind of served as inspiration for it, right? Because there's a variety of songs that you'll have had. So while looking at the lyrics, how do you kind of decide on what like theme would each song be about, really?
Yeah, I think also speaking to your previous question, the lyrics, Ben is really great with like, he's really good with like lyrics and grammar and ideas, and is like really in like a big, like he went to like really nice college, and like he's really smart. And so I feel like me and him, like feeding stuff off of him, sometimes I'm a little bit more wild and like kind of can be like, sometimes I'll just say stuff and put stuff in there that works, and he's like, well, okay, I get what you're doing here, but what if we did it this way? Like he kind of reels it in a bit, because I can get kind of like get so wild to where it almost doesn't make sense, and so he kind of reels it in. And then like we play off each other really well, I guess is what I'm getting at. Where I didn't have much of that in previous bands. It was more like, okay, what sounds cool here? That works. But with Ben, like we can kind of get deeper, and he'll kind of like ask me questions to like try and instead of be like, you know, sometimes there's rock and roll cliches that you can't avoid, like baby or mama or whatever, you know, or like darling or whatever. But like he really like tries to help push me to like get deeper and more creative with like kind of making it unique and fun. And that's been really exciting to be able to do that with Intranced. And so for this album, when we go to each song, it's just, It usually starts with a word or a phrase that I get, and I didn't realize this, but like it's I just hear a lot of melodies and notes and stuff when I hear chords or music. So melodies come to me pretty easily. I realize that that is not for everyone. That's what I'm being told, at least. So I have a lot of melody ideas that come up when I hear chords or a riff or whatever. And out of those melody ideas, I'll start to like pick phrases. Sometimes it comes from the working title of the song, because when we title a song, even if it's a working title, that I try and see like, can I make this into a theme for the song, and how would it work for the song? It doesn't always work, but when it does, like I try and make it a challenge and just have fun with it. And so yeah, I think that's kind of that's kind of how it works. And then whether or not I'm going to do it in Spanish is the next question. And sometimes it makes sense or not to add some Spanish into it. But yeah, I think that's like, as generally speaking, how I could describe the process. But if you want to go deeper, I can.
No, it makes sense. And one thing I wanted to add back in, I think I forgot to mention at the start, is when you'll do the Spanish tracks also, right? It seems authentic. It seems real. It doesn't seem like forced, right? With a lot of metal, and especially those in non-English, you sometimes question is this like a gimmick or things like that, right? But one thing I really liked about Intranced is it doesn't come across as a gimmick. You talked about, just the jammy feel and putting it all together. I described to a friend that this would be a great album, just like it's a fun metal album. It doesn't feel like, how do I say, like most metal albums. And of course, it has to do with the kind of music that you're playing also, right? It's up-tempo and things like that. Before we kind of dive in more into the music and talk about it, you'll have currently released 3 singles from the album so far. Would there be one song maybe from the singles or otherwise that you'd like our listeners to hear? Maybe something that kind of holds significance for you personally and you'd like to share, maybe?
Well, I think the 2 that I thought of would either be I Don't Know Nothing or See You on the Other Side. But I think maybe I Don't Know Nothing, because that's a bit more upbeat. The other one's a ballad.
Okay, awesome. And is it just because it's a ballad you want to pick I Don't Know Nothing?
Yeah, well, I think it's just like it's might change the energy of the podcast to like really come out with a ballad there. But I think I Don't Know Nothing is a cool one that we haven't done a single for.
Great. So here's I Don't Know Nothing by Intranced.
Try to see
That was I Don't Know Nothing by Intranced of their latest album, Muerte y Metal, and I'm talking to Luna. Now, one of the things I also wanted to kind of dive in, since you kind of mentioned about the lyrics, right? This album also features, you've got Nico on bass, who's added to the lineup. And you even talked about, the entire trip to Argentina. Was there like certain moments where, you really felt like, wow, this is where we've got something special, we've got something different that we're working on Muerte y Metal? Any kind of memory that comes to mind that you could share?
Yeah, I think, it actually started when we did our single. It was Rogue Warrior and La Fuerza Negra, and with that it was the first recordings that Nico played on with us, and so that kind of was like, oh wow, this is really cool. And him and I collaborated very heavily on writing the Spanish lyrics for La Fuerza Negra, which means like dark forces or evil forces in English. And so when it came to do the full length and recording in Argentina, it was like one of his friends threw out the idea, like, oh, what if you did this, like make a song called Muerte y Metal? Like that would be cool. Like death and metal. Okay, yeah. And then that was like the working title of like the first thing that we worked on, which just started with like that little kind of instrumental, like ding, 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 like that little, like that soft, like clean guitar thing that is now Muerte y Metal, that song. And yeah, just like Nico's groove and his playing and his like production skills and engineering skills like just added so much value, and just a lot of magic and chemistry to the whole process. We really got to hear him shine, I think, on the other song that I mentioned, See You on the Other Side, the ballad, because there's moments there where we just let him go with it and this really groove. He has like a strong rock background, but also he's got a really strong like jazz and funk background that he's played in over the years. So that really, you get to like hear like him just like going up the scale and like kind of riffing towards the end of that song, which was really cool to just let him go like full tilt. Yeah, I think that.
Now, one of the things also I noticed in your press release, right? You'll have very clearly mentioned your musical influences, right? Thin Lizzy, UFO, Riot, and others, right? One of the challenges that, at least to me, occurred, and I wanted to kind of understand more, is how do you take these influences that you have and kind of channel them and have kind of add your own spin to the sound, right? And if that was what you all were thinking, what would you say, or how would you describe what you all add to this entire sound, right? I mean, because let's be honest, like heavy metal is heavy metal, but then what you guys are doing, there's something additional to it.
I'm not fully sure how to explain it, but I think you listen to enough of all the bands that you like and just listen to more stuff like that, and it just kind of becomes almost second nature, or like it just kind of becomes instilled, and then it's like, oh well, they would kind of do this here, and then you kind of take, it's like put it all into a melting pot and stir it up, and then like take little like inflections or little like movements from each one, but then knowing enough that you're like, okay, like this is I can't do this, go here, because it's going to be a rip off of that, but maybe I can do this and kind of like pay a little bit of homage for a second and then kind of go and do my own thing. So it's just kind of playing with that, like knowing your favorites enough to where like you're inspired by them and they're like influencing stuff, and but then also within playing with other guys that know those same influences and know the same style, like we can play off of each other and throw new things into the mix. And I think I think just developing that ear and that feeling and that vibe and the whole like playing style through those like classics of metal and hard rock kind of is what kind of gives us like the musical palette to create what we're doing.
Yeah, and it's so true, right? Because I feel there's a very thin line between being influenced and just completely ripping off, really, and just like staying in those lines is really important. Now, I'm pretty sure you kind of expected this question, or maybe I hope you're not too tired of talking about it, but in the last, I would say, more than a decade, right? And I mean, this is something I've talked extensively to Trevor about, is you've got the new wave of traditional heavy metal and that kind of movement come together. And you're not seeing it just in the US now, right? You're seeing it in other parts of the world there. What are your thoughts? And especially as someone who's kind of been kind of observing this over a period of time and being heavily entrenched in this, right? I mean, Entranced, actually, when I was looking at it, there was something I read as new wave of Latin heavy metal movement. And I was like, wow, like I didn't know about this.
I think for me, that was almost being kind of silly and kind of a bit, a bit mocking the new wave of traditional heavy metal, because when I started White Wizard, there was no new wave of traditional heavy metal movement. There wasn't even like, I think Spotify was maybe out, and like YouTube records were like, it was like early mid 2000s, so like there wasn't like, the industry wasn't the same then. It was like MySpace, and it like people didn't upload full albums on YouTube that I remember, because that stuff would always get taken down, and now it's like you can find anything on YouTube or upload it on some mix site or whatever, So back then it was like maybe SoulSeek or like some kind of like torrent sites you can kind of get music. But yeah, so I think then, so when I was like, what is new wave of traditional heavy metal? Like, and it's like, there's bands that are saying they're like, oh, we're influenced by a new album. It's like, okay, yeah, maybe you've heard Iron Maiden, or maybe you heard like, maybe you heard Tigers of Pantang, but like, do you really know like what the scene is about and like what the movement is about? Because that movement was all about like, almost like this punk rock ethos of like DIY and like very like almost like low budget metal, where they just kind of make stuff in garages and everyone is like a community. And I have a lot of 7-inches that I've collected over the years from that era. So I think for me, when I hear new autumn or new wave of traditional heavy metal, I'm like, yeah, like that's just classic metal, I guess. New bands doing classic metal. And so I thought it would be fun to say Latino album, which is Latino new wave of traditional heavy metal, or Latino new wave of British heavy metal, just to like add more acronyms and to kind of like throw people off even more. But I do like playing with words, so I think that was just like a mockery of words and acronyms to throw in there.
All right. I have to ask, right? And I was thinking about this while I was listening to the album, is watching these songs live would be a lot of fun, right? Just the entire vibe, atmosphere. And I'm referring to Muerte y Metal. But if you have to look back in the last few years, what's been the most memorable Entranced show so far? I mean, you did talk about doing that first tour with Haunt, but anything else you'd like to kind of remember? Any particular city you played?
I think one of our most notable performances so far has been playing at Hell's Heroes. It's by far been one of the bigger rooms, really well received, and I don't know if you're familiar with that festival. It started off as old school metal. It's incorporated black metal now and thrash. And we did the 6th version of it just this past March in Houston, Texas, and it's becoming the one festival in the U.S. where Europeans come out to America versus Americans going to Europe for festivals, and it's just kind of a cool cult festival, and people are there that really understand the traditional metal, new wave of traditional heavy metal, classic hard rock and metal, and so we were just so well received there, and to be able to play one of the new songs, actually a couple new songs from the record, and those be received really well. It just felt really awesome, and just to be in that scene, just be in our element there. So that was a very notable show for us.
Yeah, I actually have a friend who's based out of Estonia who came down for Hell's Heroes. And that was really cool just to kind of vicariously live through his Instagram stories and stuff like that. Because I think it's exactly as you described, right? You traditionally had a lot of these festivals happen in Europe. You've got Keep It True and others. And now slowly, you've got Hell's Heroes that's happening in the US. So it's cool just to see a concentration of those bands. For those tuned in, when can they expect to see Intranced live? Do you all have any plans in support of the new album?
We're working on something possibly this fall. We're just waiting to hear back. And if not, it's going to be in... we're not as active touring band as maybe Holy Grail is, where we're just always on the road, but we are going to be doing some touring, and it's probably going to be looking like the beginning of 2025, and really hoping to get to Europe in the spring. And so that's kind of what we're working towards. We might have a show or two in the next few months here in LA, but outside of LA, we're still waiting to hear back. So nothing to announce yet, but if you keep an eye out on our Instagram and on our Bandcamp for further details.
Perfect. So before we wrap up, I want to quickly give you the opportunity to say any final words, any shout outs. This is your space. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just want to give a shout out to all the old school metal fans and just fans that have followed any of my projects over the years, and new fans of Intranced, and just thank you to my bandmates and the High Roller Records for having this, Intranced be a thing. And and thank you for asking me to come on here and chat with you. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Luna. Really appreciate you taking time out, and all the best, and looking forward to more updates from Intranced.
Thank you, Peter. Likewise.
And that was Luna of Intranced. Muerte y Metal is an album I've been listening to quite often in the last month or so since I got it. What I really enjoyed, like I mentioned in the chat, was just how they kind of add their own flavor with the Latin influences and also Spanish on heavy metal that we kind of already know about. Let me know what you think about the album. Have you heard of Intranced before? Are you a fan of the new wave of British heavy? Are you a fan of the new wave of traditional heavy metal? Let me know what you think. You can get in touch with me at trendcrusher@gmail.com, or hit me up on Instagram or Facebook, or hit me up on any social media platform. Just search for Trendcrusher. That's all I've got for this week. I'll see you all very soon. Cheers.